Russia suffered one of the hardest blows to its elite air arm since the beginning of the war. Amid the ongoing fallout this Saturday, May 2, 2026, Ukrainian authorities claimed that drones hit fighter jets inside the Chagol air base in the Chelyabinsk region, about 1,700 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. With satellite images and military statements showing that Ukraine managed to reach a distance that Moscow considered safe. I'll tell you all about that in a moment, but right now you'll want to subscribe to the channel to stay well informed with real-time information at the highest journalistic quality ever seen with the Milson Alves standard of credibility. According to the Ukrainian General Staff and the commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces, Robert Magyarbrovd, Ukrainian drones hit high-value Russian aircraft including fighter jets, Su-57S and at least one Su-34. The information released was about the plane hit on April 25. Ukraine, as it usually does in such cases, tried to downplay the public impact of the operation, but satellite images and the subsequent movement on the base's tarmac cast serious doubt on Moscow's version. The main point is simple. The Su-57 is not an ordinary aircraft in the Russian Air Force. Moscow presents it as its fifth-generation fighter jet. It's their showcase of stealth technology, their answer to advanced American models like the F-22 and the F-35. Even so, Russia has few of these aircraft. Recent estimates put the operational fleet at only a small number, while other assessments mention something between 32 and 42 units produced or available in different conditions. In other words, any loss or serious damage is not just a military setback, it's a direct blow to the image of power that the Kremlin tries to project, and that's the significance of the attack. Ukraine didn't just target the runway, depot, or secondary structure. The target was a symbol. The Su-57 is expensive. It's hard to produce. It depends on an industrial base under pressure from sanctions and can't be replaced quickly. When an aircraft like this is damaged on the ground, the loss goes beyond the airframe you see in the image. For a power that's trying to show control, absolute control over its own territory, seeing drones reach the Urals is an unsettling sign. The attack was reportedly carried out with long-range drones as part of a strategy that Ukraine has been using to wear down the Russian military machine far from the front lines. Kyiv has been targeting objectives that hurt logistics, aviation, and the financing of the war. This strategy doesn't require taking territory at that moment. It's aiming for something else. To force Russia to spread its air defenses over a huge area, to protect refineries, bases, factories, ports, and military airfields at the same time. This consumes resources, creates internal tension, and leaves increasingly obvious gaps. The Chagol base is located in Chelyabinsk, a region far from the direct fighting in Ukraine. That's exactly what makes the attack so sensitive. What? Why? He tried to convey the idea that the Russian interior was a safe rear area. Now, each new Ukrainian action against distant targets dismantles that feeling. If drones can hit advanced aircraft 1,700 kilometers away, the message is harsh. The depth of Russian territory no longer guarantees automatic protection. The Su-34 also plays an important role in this equation. It is used by Russia as an attack platform, especially in bombings with guided munitions and missiles. In practice, it is an aircraft used to exert broad pressure on cities, the energy sector, infrastructure, and Ukrainian positions. That's why Kyiv treats this type of target as a priority. By hitting planes on the ground, Ukraine tries to reduce Russia's ability to launch attacks without having to face these aircraft in the air, where the risk would be much greater. The strike in Chagol is also part of a larger sequence. In recent days, Ukraine has resumed attacks on energy infrastructure inside Russia. The port and terminal of Tuapse on the Black Sea was hit for the fourth time in just over 2 weeks, according to the Associated Press and Reuters. The site is important for the flow of Russian oil and for the revenue that helps Moscow sustain the war. The repeated attacks show that Kyiv does not just want to cause isolated damage. They want to impose continuous pressure, hitting the Kremlin's finances, logistics, and confidence. Russia responded with more attacks against Ukraine. On May 1st, Moscow launched a major offensive with drones, hitting regions such as Ternopil, Cherkasy, Vinnytsia, and Odessa. This data shows that the war has entered a phase of permanent aerial attrition, with drones becoming a central tool for both sides. But there is an important difference. Importantly, while Moscow tries to break Ukrainian infrastructure, Ukraine tries to hit the points that sustain Russia's ability to keep attacking. That's why the attack in Chagol has so much political weight. Ukraine is trying to show that Russia can strike, but it can also be hit where it hurts. And in this case, the target wasn't just any facility, it was Russia's advanced aviation. Precisely the sector that Moscow uses to tell the world that it's still at the top of military technology. This perception has an impact on allies, arms buyers, and on the Russian command itself. There's also a practical effect on the battlefield. If Russia needs to move air defense systems to protect distant bases, it takes part of that protection away from other areas. If it needs to keep planes in close structures, it makes quick operations more difficult. If it needs to repair complex aircraft, it uses parts, technician time, and specialized labor. In a Russian war, these details matter. Victory doesn't come from just one explosion. It comes from the accumulation of costs that the enemy can't replace at the same pace. Recent history reinforces this path. In June 2025, Ukraine had already carried out Operation Spiderweb, an action against Russian bases that struck strategic bombers used to launch long-range missiles. June 2025. Estimaram na época que 10 aviões Russian ones that hit strategic targets. In June, Ukraine had already carried out Operation Spider, targeting Russian bases used to launch long-range missiles. In June, Ukraine had already carried out Operation Spider, targeting Russian bases used to launch long-range missiles. An operation against Russian strategic bombers used to launch long-range missiles. Ukraine struck bombers used to launch missiles. In June, Operation Web took place. In June, our analysts evaluated Russian actions. In June, Ukraine carried out Operation Web, targeting Russian bombers. It was an operation against Russian bombers used to launch long-range missiles. In June, Ukraine carried out Operation Spider against Russian strategic bombers. In June, Ukraine conducted an operation against Russian forces. In June, Ukraine struck Russian bombers used to launch long-range missiles during Operation Spider, targeting Russian bombers used to launch long-range missiles. Russian bombers were struck for launching long-range missiles. Ukraine carried out an operation against Russian long-range capabilities. Israel became known for striking strategic targets before greater threats could develop. The United States used long-range operations to destroy command centers, radars, and military structures before advancing in larger campaigns. The logic is similar. It's not enough to face soldiers on the front line. You have to blind the enemy machine, cripple its reach, and cut off its fuel. Ukraine is trying to do this against Russia, but with cheaper drones and increasingly deep attacks. It's a sequence: refineries in flames, ports under pressure, oil facilities attacked, bombers already hit in the past, and now stealth fighters in the spotlight. Russia still has great military power. It is still launching heavy attacks, and it still causes enormous destruction in Ukraine. But the idea that its rear areas are protected has grown weaker and weaker. Kyiv is trying to turn this weakness into a political advantage. By showing that it can reach Chelyabinsk, Ukraine sends a message to Moscow, to Europe, and to Washington. To Moscow, it says that the war can come back to Russian soil. To Europe, it shows that military and technological aid is producing results. To Washington, it underscores that Ukraine can still surprise and degrade Russian capabilities, even after years of war. The attack also shows a change in drone warfare. In the beginning, many saw these devices as support weapons, useful for observation or small attacks. Now they are hitting refineries, strategic bases, and high-value aircraft. Ukraine understood that it doesn't need to have an air fleet larger than Russia's to inflict pain. It needs to find gaps, choose the right targets, and repeat the strike until it forces Moscow to defend itself everywhere. The war goes on, but this time the message hit hard. Putin's crown jewel of military aviation no longer seems so safe inside Russia itself. This is Milson Alves News, and my purpose is to keep you accurately informed every day. The news links are in the video description. Leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel and check the comments afterward to stay engaged with the Milson Alves community.